Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. Mr. Lighthizer, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your candor and your willingness not to speak from a script in these hearings. So often that's what we hear. I don't necessarily agree with much of what you say, but I agree. I do believe you're giving us your candid view. You mentioned in your written testimony, and again in your oral testimony, the need to deal with hostile economic competitors. And I can never figure out who that is from the point of view of the United States at this point, but would you call Canada a hostile economic competitor to the United States?
I would call them an economic competitor.
Okay, that's different than a hostile economic.
I agree with that completely.
What about Mexico? Are they a hostile economic competitor?
Only some. No, I'm kidding. Of course not. No.
What about the members of the EU? Are any members of the EU a hostile economic competitor?
In my view, they're not.
Okay, I think it's very important to make these distinctions because our allies are hearing the administration describe them as hostile, when I don't think you mean to describe them as hostile. The President may have a different view, but they're hearing that. And I want you to know that because we're hearing it as well. I wanted also to go back to the discussion about agriculture. You pointed out that agriculture as a sector is most vulnerable to retaliation of any sector that we have. Isn't that right?
I mean, I don't. They certainly are in everybody's crosshairs in the first.
And we've already seen it.
Vulnerable.
We've already seen it with sorghum.
And it's even more vulnerable into the current economic environment than
Exactly, exactly. And you said you were sympathetic to that. That was the word you used, and that, but that we couldn't give up our right to defend our action, and that maybe the Congress could pass something up here that could mitigate the damage that's being done. That is not what our farmers and ranchers want. Our farmers and ranchers want to be able to export the goods that they are producing here in the United States. They don't need sympathy. They need the administration to act responsibly. And along the lines with what I was asking earlier about our describing other countries as hostile, do you think the President has any awareness, Mr. Lighthizer, about the effect he has on the domestic politics of our allies when he makes these tweets or decides on a day that we ought to increase tariffs by 25% on steel and aluminum? I think he thinks he's scaring other people, but he's not really having that effect. I wonder whether you have a sense of the domestic politics in these other places.
Listen, I'm a Trump supporter. I love the President. I'm a trade expert. I'm not going to get engaged with you in a political thing. That's not what I came here to do.
Well, it's not a political thing. Would you agree that what he says could have an effect on agricultural commodity prices in the United States if people believe that other countries are going to retaliate against the proposed trade policies of the United States? That our farmers and ranchers are already being affected in the commodity prices that they're seeing as a result of this rhetoric? Would you agree that there's a danger of that?
What I would agree with is that we have trade rights that we have to defend, and that too often farmers get the short end of the stick.
Well, that's right. They do.
We have to deal. We cannot give up the fact that we have an $800 billion deficit.
Nobody's asking you. I'm not asking you to do that.
We have to balance this.
I'm asking you to understand that that everybody is listening, and that our farmers and ranchers are bearing the brunt of it. And what I'm not asking you to do is not fight for our fair rights to trade. That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is for us to do it in a way that doesn't inadvertently, I hope it's inadvertent, I'm sure it's not advertent, inadvertently drive commodity prices down at a moment when our farmers and ranchers can least withstand that.
I'm sorry, if that was that, what was the question?
I'll just finish by saying I don't think it helps when the President announced, I'm sure he didn't consult with anybody here before he announced those tariffs. He said, I'm going to raise tariffs by 25%, and then 3 weeks later you come with a list of Australia, Korea, Canada, Mexico, European Union, and some others. Sorry, we didn't really mean it. This isn't a business transaction that, for real estate in New York City. This is the trade policy of the United States of America, and I wish you guys would consult with us so that, or just the Republicans even, so that you can understand the effect that you're having in places like Weld County, Colorado, where we need to have strong commodity prices and where 80% of our wheat is exported overseas. My time is up. I apologize, Mr. President. I'll just acknowledge that my farmers and ranchers know very well that the day that the President announced these tariff increases, TPP was being signed in Chile by the enumerated countries there, and they are still waiting for this administration to have what it suggested would be its unilateral trade negotiations with every member of TPP to see that their equities are being thought of by this administration.
Senator, your time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator